YouTube, and welcome back to Old Maryland 63 C10. This is episode 16, and in this episode we are going to be working on getting the steering back onto the chassis of the truck. Last episode was control arms, spindles, springs, those kind of things, and this one's going to focus on the steering. So hopefully by the end of this video we have Hank's chassis back down on all four wheels, which would be great. So let's get started on the steering. So we're going to start out with the steering box and the front suspension. I have the brakes and rotors. I'll do that next. So I had the original steering box. I didn't buy a new one, just cleaned it up and had it painted. Of course, new idle arm and the bolts, everything, got those cleaned up. The drag link, of course, had that powder coated, but the inner and outer ball joints with the rubber boots, they had to be painted. So that's what's been taking me a little while with my barn being so cold. It's taken me a while to get things painted. And then of course, a new idler arm. So let's get started. We're gonna put the steering box on first. Steering box is mounted to the frame, and I actually torqued these nuts and bolts. The manual says anywhere from 65 to 75, so I did 70 foot-pounds of torque on those bolts. So the next thing is to get the Pitman arm on, and it's keyed, but I thought it would only be keyed one way, but it's not. It can go into several different positions. So hopefully you can see, I made a little silver mark on the shaft there, and it's clocked all the way to one direction. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spin it back, see how many times we go around, and then come back halfway and know I'm pretty much in the center. So we'll go ahead and do that. Six, and I'm gonna call that a quarter. I don't know if you can see where that mark is down here. So it's like 6 1/4. So we're gonna come back 3 in a little bit. So we'll come back to 3 and a little bit. So then we'll put the Pitman arm back up kind of, again, parallel with the frame, and that should get us pretty close. So that's where the Pitman arm fits in the keys. Again, looks parallel to the frame, so I'm gonna say that's probably good. I'll spin it around a couple more times just to make sure. The nut, I'm gonna tap it on a little bit further with my hammer before I put the nut on, but the nut goes on and then it gets torqued to 140 foot-pounds of torque. Okay, so one thing to note about the idle arms is this is the original one that came off the truck, and you can see it's almost got 2 dog legs in it. It's got the first one that comes off here, the bracket comes up, then it does another little dog leg here, and it had this spacer on there to have it sit flush with the frame. The one from Moog just has the one that comes off, again, the bottom of the arm, and the bracket just has one dog leg. But it comes with this extra bracket, or extra block, whatever you want to call it, and this happens to be about the same width as the spacer. Now I looked at my parts truck, which obviously had one replaced because it has this style with just a straight bar, but there's no block in between it. Moog does say to include this block, between the frame and the bracket. So again, while I have one truck that obviously was driving around at some point, didn't have it in there, I'm gonna go ahead and include it in there, again, mainly because it's the same size as this spacer, and try to make it as close to geometry-wise as the original. Mine didn't have any kind of cushion or anything between the drag link and the original, but it could have obviously just disappeared, worn away, disintegrated. So I think this goes here between the drag links. So that's where we're gonna put it. It seems to fit there. It didn't come with any lock washers, so I'm just gonna grab a couple lock washers and put those on, and we'll hopefully be good to go. Okay, so this is something I didn't pay attention to. I had these bolts in my hand when I was showing you the idle arm, and I all of a sudden realized these are way too long for my frame. So I grabbed, as ugly as they are compared to the rest of my frame, I grabbed the original bolt for the top. That was where the spacer was because it was long enough to go through. And I just found another bolt in my stash that I think is I think it's at least a grade 5 bolt, but clearly I'm not going to leave these ugly things on the frame, but to be able to keep moving forward, I'm going to leave it the way it is for now. And I'll probably go out and just buy a couple grade 8 bolts to be able to replace them with, because again, I'm definitely not going to leave them not painted at a minimum. So let's go ahead and get the drag link on, and that'll be next. The drag link's next. It's got a little dog leg in it. I don't know if I got that in the camera view there. The dog leg goes back towards the cross member, but it really can only fit one way. Obviously this eye over here is bigger for the Pitman arm than the other side with the idle arm, but I just double checked to make sure on my parts truck that I had, you know, the dog leg facing back. But again, there's really only one way it can go on. Okay, and these seats get tightened down to 60 foot-pounds. Okay, I need to bend the cotter keys over, but it's amazing how close this is to the front cross member. I mean, obviously we make it, it's spinning past it, but it's barely any space between the two. So, but it's on, it's torqued, I gotta bend the cotter pins. Now we're gonna move on to the tie rods. And if you remember in the earlier video when I took all the suspension apart, I've taped up the tie rod ends inner and outer to be able to measure and hopefully get close. Obviously the cross member's out of it, new bushings, everything's gonna need to be in alignment. So I just wanna get close. So we just saved this and I marked this one. So obviously this is the passenger side. Outer, inner. The outers on 63s, this is one thing that makes them a little unique, is really short and it's got a long adjuster. These are more expensive than the 65 and 66 up, might even go to 67 or 68, but these are basically 64 to 66 inner and outer tie rod ends, and it just comes with a smaller sleeve. So we're gonna go ahead and get these together and get them close. Again, I don't know if you have to do this, but obviously this is gonna be adjusted. So I'm just gonna put a little dab of anti-seize inside the adjuster. Because again, whoever does the alignment for me is gonna be wanting these things to move freely. So we'll just start one side and then start the other. Okay, once they start, I want to try to do it about the same amount, but I might have to take this over to my vise to be able to hold it still. Let's see if I can get a clamp. Kind of makeshift, but we'll see. Okay. Okay, let's see how generally close we are. So I'm going to measure from the grease zert on this one and halfway in between this back, and I'm going to call that 15.5. So I'm just tying it up here. Okay, that might be a little heavy, but for right now we're going to let this go, and then we'll put them on the truck and see how close they are when they're in the right place. And so we'll do the other one, and then we'll put them on the truck. Okay, so let's go ahead and put the inner and outer tie rod on. I've got the grease zerts on it, threaded it in close to what the measurement of the original was. I'm gonna get in there. Okay, let's get our nuts on. Okay, and these get torqued to 30 foot-pounds. Okay, and just like with the ball joints and the other cotter pins, I torque it, and then I'm going to take it further to find the hole for the cotter pin instead of looser. So this one needs, this one's right on, only needs just a slight bit. There we go. Okay, so let's bend these over and we'll get, oh no, I'm sorry. So I'll bend these over, but before we do that, let's go back to the measurement, and again, the original is about, I'm gonna say 15 5/8. Again, it just has to be close. And this one is maybe just slightly long. So let's see about pulling it in just a little bit. Yep, there we go. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and tighten this down, and then we'll move on to putting the brakes on. The next thing we need to do to get the rotors on is, of course, pack the wheel bearings. So I do this pretty much old school. Get a slob of grease on your hand, and then just start working it into the bearing. And when you can start to see the grease coming up on your side of the bearing, then you know you're getting pretty close. Okay, so you can see you got grease pretty much coming out between all the bearings, and you can see it's kind of pressed up into the inner ring. So we're in pretty good shape with this one. Just give it a swipe. And I already cleaned out my inner race with a little bit of 2+2. So that's clean, so we can go ahead and drop that one in there. Get some more grease and work on this front one. Okay, so that's the front one. Let's get the other two. Oh, they're right here. Okay, let's go ahead and get the bearing in and put the seal on. So we'll just put some grease down in the hole. We'll put some more on from the other side when we come in that way too. Just wanted to make sure you get plenty in there. Drop the bearing in. Hopefully just some gentle taps. And there we go. Okay, let's take these over to the truck and get them on. Okay, now the way I was taught to do this is you kind of tighten the bolt down until you don't have any more movement, or it's, drags so much that you can't really spin it. So I'm just about there right now. And then you back it off to put the cotter pin in. Okay, coming down to some of the final steps. Got to get the caliper on. Okay, this side's pretty much done. Got the brake caliper on, we gotta do the other side. But I wanted to see if anybody wants to comment. I'm not real crazy though with the way the CPP kit brake line runs up to the cross member right here. This is a pretty tight loop going around here. And I'll see if it rubs when I put the rim on, but that's with the wheel kind of turning out that direction a little bit. I'm just wondering if that thing's gonna pinch coming back when it's turned hard to the right. So if anybody's installed this kit already and their brake line kind of ran like that, if they have any suggestions, I don't know how else it would come out of the caliper, because I mean, that's the way the boss is made, is for the line to run up, but then it's got a pretty big kink in it. So give me some comments or give me some feedback in the comment section, and let me know if your kit looks like that or if I've got this in here wrong. Let's do the other side and finish this up. Everybody, I can tell you I'm very happy with where we are right now. For the first time in a long time, Hank's frame is back down on all four wheels. Got him on the dollies to be able to move around, which will be nice. Again, I'm really thrilled to get to this point because I feel like I've kind of gotten the frame pretty much where I want it. I know I have a lot of little things still to go on the chassis. I made a list of things that I'll need to do before we really even consider getting it back on the road. I need to grease all my bushings and tie rod ends and all those things. I got to torque all of the hardware on the rear suspension. Obviously we need brake lines, and there's some touch-up paint and things like that that I want to make sure I do before the cab and the body goes back on the frame. So we still have some things like that to do, but again, I am about as happy as I could be because the frame is back on all four wheels. Took a while to get here. I'm not gonna let this part get me down, but I looked at YouTube and I put out my first video about 12 months ago, And in that first video, my goal was to have the truck pretty much back together in a year. Clearly I missed that goal by a mile, but I'm not gonna get upset by that because again, I'm too happy today with just getting the chassis back together. But this is gonna kind of go away and get pushed to the side. So I'm gonna do a good cleanup in my shop. Not that it ever looks like it's clean on YouTube, but I wanna go through and just tidy up a few things. And in the next episode, we're gonna get into the cab. So we'll be assessing what we need to fix, get it taken apart, and get on to that part of it. But for right now, the chassis is pretty much done. That's gonna wrap up this video. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the videos and the progress we're making. And we'll see you next time on Old Maryland 63 C10 where we get into Hank's cab. Thanks for watching.